Welcome to Crown TV. Immerse yourself with a captivating audio from our stories. We provide an alternative way to read books in audio. We upload many audiobooks as possible, from bestsellers to timeless classic. Subscribe and stay tuned for new upload.
Episode 196, A Memorable Performance. Mr. Parker didn't make any statement over the following days, so there was no news about Alex's donation to the school. In the eyes of the students, Alex was still that poor loser. He would rehearse with Leona whenever he had the time. However, after several previous incidents, Leona's attitude toward him had become even colder. In the twinkling of an eye, it was the day of the New Year's party. On the campus grounds of Richmond University, a stage on a steel structure had been set up in the morning. In the afternoon, when the sun started to go down, the stage was lit up with blue lights, waiting for nightfall and the party to begin. Alex had a good nap in the afternoon. When he got up, he washed, dressed, and ran over to the stage. He arrived at the area behind the stage where the performers were getting ready. Leona and Colin weren't there yet. Alex saw several members of the student union, all dressed in suits, maintaining order at the venue. His roommate Eddie was also there. Alex realized that he would be jumping around on the stage a lot during his performance, so he ran over to Eddie and asked him to hold his phone for him. He would get it back after the show. The performers were all making their final preparations. Fiona, Alex's dance partner, was angry. She had just been to an off-campus restaurant with a classmate and had left a very important prop, her hairband, behind. Fiona was wondering whether to go and retrieve her hairband, but decided that the restaurant was too far away. When she saw Alex, she came up with an idea. With his long legs, he could surely run fast. She decided to ask him to go and get it for her. "Alex, I left my main prop, my hairband, in an off-campus restaurant. Would you find it for me?" she asked him anxiously. "You yourself can go. We still have more than an hour before the show starts. You can make it in time," Alex said. Fiona's such a fool. Why does she lose things? And then she expects me to find them for her, he thought. "Well, if you go, I can help Leona put on her costume. If I'm gone, who else will help her? Do you want Colin to help her?" she asked. After many days of watching him, Fiona knew that Alex was secretly in love with Leona. "Are you serious?" Alex asked. "You don't want to go? Okay, I'll go by myself and let Colin help Leona get dressed," Fiona retorted. "Okay, I'll help you find it. You stay here." Alex quickly stood up. The image of Colin dressing Leona scared him. So, without giving it another thought, he ran out to the avenue. You little loser. You really are in love with Leona," Fiona said to herself. She sighed and sat down leisurely on the chair with a smile on her face. At that moment, Colin and Leona came along. They had already put on their makeup and their costumes. "Hasn't Alex arrived yet?" Colin asked with a frown. "Well, Colin, as you can see, this boy doesn't take the party too seriously," Leona replied. Colin snorted. "What this boy should do is not make a fool of himself on stage." Leona's cell phone rang. It was her sister, Lindsay. She put the phone to her ear. "Hey, Leona, are you having a New Year's party tonight? I want to go to it." Lindsay's sweet voice came over the phone. "Yes, get in a taxi and get yourself over here. My performance is in the second half. You'll be able to see it when you come over," Leona said with a smile. I want to, but it's dark and I'm afraid of going alone. Why don't you let Alex come to pick me up? I feel at ease with him, Lindsay said, with a bit of embarrassment in her voice. Leona wanted to tell Lindsay that Alex was also performing, but she knew that her sister really wanted him to accompany her. As her performance wasn't until later on in the evening, she decided that there would be plenty of time for him to fetch her and return. So she said, "Okay, I'll get him to go and pick you up now." "Thank you, sister. I'm here at KFC. Please ask him to call me." Lindsay hung up the phone. Leona shook her head. She found Alex's phone number in a directory of performers. She entered the number and was about to call him when she suddenly thought that if he received a call from her, he might think that she was beginning to have feelings for him. In the end, she decided not to call, but to send him a short text message instead, asking him to pick up Lindsay. At 8 o'clock in the evening, a crowd of people was sitting next to the stage. All were freshmen at Richmond University. Around them sat 2 or 3 circles of sophomores and juniors. After a burst of dazzling lights, the party officially began. A set of performers, one after another, appeared on the stage, and cheers and applause rose from the audience. Alex managed to find Fiona's lost hairband and finally returned. Fiona welcomed him back and thanked him. Seeing that Leona was dressed and ready, he asked, "Leona's already outfitted?" Fiona touched her nose and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I helped her. Colin didn't put a finger on her." Alex felt relieved. He was tired after running to get Fiona's hairband, but it had been worth it. He slowly walked over to Leona and sat down. When she saw him, Leona wondered why he had taken so long to fetch Lindsay, and asked, "Did you manage it?" As she seldom talked to him, Alex felt flattered. He thought that she was asking whether he had brought back Fiona's hairband. He nodded and said with a smile, "Yes." "That's good." Leona saw that her turn to go on stage was coming up, and there was no need to rush to meet Lindsay. The host of the event said loudly, "The next program is Dream of a Child's Heart. I know that you're looking forward to it. The performers are Colin, Leona, Doug, Fiona, and Alex." After the host opened the curtains, cheers rose from the audience. All the students were happy. Colin was Prince Charming in the eyes of the girls, and Leona was a goddess in the eyes of the boys. They were the perfect combination. Before Colin and his colleagues stepped onto the stage, the atmosphere was incandescent. The boys yelled, "Leona! Leona! Leona!" The girls, not wanting to be outdone, shouted, "Colin! Colin! Colin!" When Colin and the rest of the group appeared from backstage, some members of the audience covered their mouths and jumped up in excitement. When the lights went out, there was total silence. As the lighting gradually brightened the stage and the first chords of the musical accompaniment sounded, Leona began to sing. "Where is the world full of flowers? If it really exists, then I will go to it. I want to stand on the highest mountain there. I don't care whether it is a precipice or not." She stopped singing, and Colin's voice rang out. "Live hard and love hard. Even if I can't be satisfied with anyone, as long as I can live up to myself, I never choose to give up on my ideals, even in the days of dishonor." They each sang in turn, and Alex ran, jumped, and stretched behind them to express the fighting spirit of the song, The Atmosphere. Alex's heart began to ache when he saw the affectionate way Colin gazed at Leona when he was singing. He hadn't forgotten that kind of feeling during rehearsals. Now, with the lighting, music, and thousands of people in the audience watching, The sensation hit him hard. He was dancing mechanically. The next song to come up was Tide. Leona and Colin's voices were perfectly matched, and a chorus joined them in the background. Running forward to meet the cold eyes in ridicule, how can we feel the vastness of life without suffering? Fate can't make us kneel down and beg for mercy, even if blood is spilled over our arms. Leona and Colin held hands, and to the rhythm of the music, the 2,000 or 3,000 members of the audience began singing along with them. The effect was spectacular. Alex continued noticing the affectionate way they looked at each other. He was supposed to sprint from the left side of the stage to the right side, but he stopped. He stood behind Leona and looked at them both. He couldn't hear Doug and Fiona reminding him to keep moving. Fortunately, the audience was so immersed in the songs that they didn't notice a dancer still standing on the stage. No compromise until you get old. At the end of the song, Leona and Colin hugged each other, and thunderous applause broke out. It wasn't clear where it started at first, but someone yelled, "Together! Together!" Shortly, the whole audience was shouting in unison, "Together! Together!" resounded throughout the campus. Colin took Leona's hand. He stared into her eyes and felt agitation drumming in his heart as his face slowly moved toward hers. Leona's emotions were in flux. With so much noise around her, she was in a state of confusion and didn't know how to react. Colin's mouth was almost touching hers. All of a sudden, Colin was pushed away. He staggered a few times and nearly fell down. Alex grabbed Leona and shoved Colin again to the side. He was furious. The audience started to get angry. Alex was destroying the fairy tale image that had been unfolding in front of them. They yelled at Alex and roared up onto the stage like waves. "What the hell are you doing?" came a voice. "Boy, you don't want to live," screamed someone else. "You're robbing my goddess," yelled a young man from the soccer team. "Push him away! He's looking for death!" screamed some girls. "How can you do this?" said someone from the front row. A lot of such screams were coming from the audience, but Alex paid heed to none. "Follow me." Alex didn't pay attention to what they were saying. He just couldn't bear the thought of someone else kissing Leona. He grabbed hold of her and ran with her backstage. "Shit, you're making trouble on purpose, aren't you?" Ian and several of the performers surrounded Alex, and by then, Colin had also appeared. "Get me some sports jocks to give him a good beating," Colin angrily said to Ian, who is the events director. "Don't do it," said Leona suddenly. "Leona, why are you protecting him?" Colin asked. Leona glanced at Alex, then looked at Colin and said, "I'm not protecting him. He didn't do anything wrong, so why do you want to find someone to beat him up?" When she said this, Colin understood that he had offended her when he was preparing to kiss her on stage, and Alex had done nothing wrong. With that, Leona went to a chair and sat down. Colin realized that he had acted badly. He had wanted to use the audience's enthusiasm to further his relationship with Leona. But unexpectedly, he had made her angry. "Colin, are you still in the physical education department?" Ian asked. Colin glared at him and immediately walked over to and sat down beside Leona. Ian shrank back in fear and stood by to see if he could help persuade Leona to warm up to him. "Leona, I'm sorry. I got so excited on the stage just now. I was acting irrationally when I did that. Can you forgive me?" Colin said earnestly. Leona listened to him sincerely and realized that she was not really touched by him. She still appreciated Colin's talent, so she nodded. "Forget it this time. By the way, our performance on the stage just now seemed to have been quite successful, and the audience liked it very much." "Did you notice how everyone sang along with us?" Seeing Leona forgive him, Colin was relieved. "Leona, Colin, you performed very well, but you didn't see that when you sang High and High Tide, that dancer stood still on the stage. If it wasn't for your excellent singing, this boy would have ruined the program," Ian said, pointing at Alex. Episode 197, In for a Surprise. "Yes, Doug and I were quietly trying to remind him to move, but he couldn't even hear us. For the final 2 minutes, he just stood there like a wooden stake." Fiona crossed her arms and looked at Alex with disdain. Alex didn't say anything. He found a bench and sat down near Leona, thinking to himself, "I saw Leona and Colin looking at each other affectionately. Everyone was stunned. I didn't mean to disturb the program. They can say whatever they want, but I couldn't let someone else kiss Leona." "By the way, did you notice the wonderful stage that we got set up today?" Ian said with pride as he looked at the steel structure. He glanced at Alex's silent figure and then ignored him. "Yes, this stage is so much better than last year's. It's like for professional singers, and the sound, lighting, and costumes are also very good. Did they cost a lot of money?" Colin asked. He and the other performers felt that the whole experience this year had been exceptional. "Yes, how much did it cost?" someone else asked. "Ian, you're the director, and you get all the money from the financial department. You must know, so tell us something," another performer said. "Heh, you were blessed. The stage I rented was the one used in the Happy Washington Carnival last year, and the music team is one of the top 10 groups in the city. The makeup artist we used was a makeup artist for Hollywood stars." Ian raised his head and said triumphantly, "Damn, no wonder. This will definitely have been the most impressive party held by any college in Washington," said a performer in surprise. "Ian, how much money did you spend? We're dying of curiosity to know," a ponytailed girl asked anxiously. $50,000, Ian said with a leisurely smile. "And after the party is over, all the participants will be given $100 to go out and have dinner wherever you want." "Oh my gosh, that's so great," said the ponytailed girl. $50,000 is so much. The record up to now was $10,000. How come there was such a big budget this year?" asked another performer. "Yes, I've never heard of anything like this. Do you know why it was so high?" said his friend, puzzled. The students backstage were both happy and puzzled. They were wondering who could have sponsored the party with such generosity. "Hey, you should thank Colin. It was his father who provided the funds," Ian said. When Ian had gone to the financial department with Colin, Colin had told him he would discuss the matter with his father. When Ian returned to the department for money the following day, they told him that well over $50,000 had been made available and that he could take any amount he needed for the party. Obviously, Colin had convinced his father to sponsor the event. When the students heard that, they went up to Colin one by one to thank and praise him. They admired him more than ever now. "Colin sponsored it. Colin is the most humble and brilliant rich student at Richmond University," said the girls backstage. "Colin got it. $50,000 is a drop in the bucket for Colin. He can probably earn much more than that in a day," said a young man. Hearing them all praise him so effusively, Colin was pleased. He said with a faint smile, "I was also a participant in this evening's party. It was the first time for me and Leona to sing together on stage, I wanted a good stage and good equipment. When Leona heard of Colin's involvement in the sponsorship, it made her feel warm inside. At that moment, Ian received a phone call. When he hung up, he happily said to Colin, "Colin, the school leaders have decided that at the end of the party, the 3 most popular performers will be given an award. The first prize will be handed over by the party's sponsor." "So, Colin's father is going to hand out the award?" a lively girl asked. "I think the first prize is definitely going to be for Colin's performance. When he came on stage, the audience was enthralled. There was no other program comparable to his," Ian said with a smile. "This is good news," Colin admitted faintly. He looked at Leona and thought that it would be a good thing if his father handed him and Leona their award. That way, he could introduce Leona to his father, and it would be easier to talk to him about her later. "The sponsor is going to present the award?" Alex muttered to himself. It wasn't the fact that he would have to appear on stage that worried him, but that if he did go on stage to present awards, his €1.5 million story would probably reach Ken Stokes' ears, which would get him into trouble with his family. Alex was annoyed. He had told the budget department that they were not allowed to let other people know about his donation. Are the heads of this school brain dead? He wondered. Lindsay had been waiting for more than an hour, but Alex had not yet appeared. She couldn't wait any longer. She wanted to call her sister and ask what was going on. However, Leona was likely to be in the middle of her performance, so she didn't want to disturb her. Lindsay sighed, feeling at a loss, and was ready to take a taxi to go to Richmond University. She stood by the side of the road for a long time, but no taxis drove by. She finally took out her phone to call one. Just then, a gray SUV drove up beside her, and the back door swung open. Lindsay was startled. Through the tinted windows, she couldn't see who was driving, so she walked slowly to the back to try to look inside. Just as she reached the back door, a big hand shot out, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her into the car. With a crack, the door was closed again. There was a scream from Lindsay, but it stopped suddenly, and the vehicle drove away. By the time the last performance of the evening had ended, Alex was at a loss. The host on the stage said in a loud voice, "Students, tonight's party has been so wonderful. I can feel your enthusiasm. We've selected the 3 most popular performances of the evening by measuring the decibels of your applause and cheers. The sketch, Our Family, the song and dance, Uptown Funk, and the song and dance, Dream of a Child's Heart, have been the 3 most popular. Next, we will present awards to them." There was a burst of warm applause from the audience. Then, awards were given to the secretary of Richmond University for him to hand out to the winners of the 3rd prize, and to the president of the Richmond University for the winners of the 2nd prize. The audience was a little confused. They talked among themselves. President Merritt was the heavyweight in the school. He was giving away the 2nd prize. Who was delivering the 1st one? Did the school invite any mysterious people? Alex sat backstage thinking for a while. He decided to sneak away. After all, he was just a minor dancer, so he was of no importance. It wasn't his problem if no one turned up to hand out the 1st prize. Just as he was about to make a quick exit, the host began calling the members of his group. "Alex, let's go. Where are you going?" Fiona grabbed him, and Doug pushed him onto the stage. When the audience saw Leona and Colin stepping onto the stage, they cheered again. "And these are the winners of the 1st prize. Now let's invite a representative of the group to talk about their feelings tonight. I think we'll interview the most popular member of the group, Colin." The host gave Colin the microphone. The girls in the audience cried out in unison, "Colin! Colin, you are the best!" It took 3 attempts to silence them. "Thank you for your support. I'm very happy to get the first place award tonight. However, there were flaws in our program. For example, we have a member who suddenly stopped dancing during the second half, which had an impact on the effect of our performance." Colin wanted to take this opportunity to belittle Alex. A video recording of their performance was being projected onto a screen as he spoke, and one could clearly see Alex standing motionless on the stage. The audience knew who Colin was talking about, and immediately there was a commotion. "That kid was ruining the show. He doesn't deserve a prize," came a voice from the crowd. "Yeah, I saw him push Colin earlier. This person is really despicable," screamed a girl angrily. "This kind of person intentionally harmed Colin, and he just wanted to screw up the program," came another voice. The angry girl waved to Alex. "Choir boy, get down from there. You don't deserve to stand next to Colin and Leona." Gradually, the audience called out as one, "Get off the stage! Get off the stage! Get off the stage!" Alex couldn't help but feel angry. Admittedly, he had made a mistake during the performance. However, to have 2,000 or 3,000 people pointed out in public was way over the top. Even if he took the microphone to defend himself, the group would never forgive him. Alex stood where he was and just wanted for it to all be over. "Well, don't blame him alone. As the person in charge of this performance, I also bear some responsibility for not having managed him properly," Colin said with his superficial smile, while inside he was sneering. Immediately there was a round of praise. "It had nothing to do with you, Colin," screamed the angry girl. "Colin, you're too responsible. That person is always like that," came another voice from the crowd. "Colin is worthy of his fortune. He's broad-minded, and he's much better than that guy who doesn't know how to behave in public," yelled another voice. With a smile, the host addressed the audience. "Please be quiet. We will now present their award. We're all very curious. Who's going to present it? The sponsor of this New Year's party is Mr. Alex Ambrose." When the host finished reading the name, he was stunned. He had read it right. It was one of the performers. He looked at Alex with a puzzled expression. "Who?" Hearing Alex's name, Colin was astounded. Wasn't the sponsor his father? How could it be Alex? Colin took a look at Alex and saw him calmly standing in place. He smiled to himself. So the sponsor hadn't been his father in the end, but it could hardly be that little loser. The sponsor was someone with the same name as him. Other people were also surprised that the sponsor wasn't Colin's father. They had thought the same as him and decided that it was a coincidence that the sponsor and Alex had the same first and last names. The host did not see Mr. Ambrose come out and said again, "Mr. Alex Ambrose, please step onto the stage to present the awards." But no one appeared. Standing on the stage, Alex was extremely ambivalent. He didn't know whether he should stand out or not. "Alex, let's get your awards. Give us awards quickly," Fiona teased him in a low voice. At that moment, President Merritt quickly stepped onto the stage with several certificates, walked to Alex's side, and said with a smile, "Mr. Ambrose, we've been looking for you all over the place, but we couldn't find you. It turns out that you're also a performer. Your performance has won first place. Congratulations. I've prepared the certificates for you. Please give out the awards to your team." Episode 198, Change of Heart. It turned out that when Alex had donated the money, President Merritt had been away on a trip. Mr. Parker of the finance department had reported Alex's donation of more than $1.5 million in euros to the vice president. He had also said that Alex wanted to remain anonymous. When President Merritt returned to the university the day before the party, the vice president told him that Alex had donated €1.5 million, which was worth even more in dollars, and that he wanted to remain anonymous. When Merritt heard the amount, he was so astounded that he didn't even hear the rest of the sentence. Merritt felt that since Alex had donated so much money, he should find a way to express his gratitude and respect toward him. The New Year's party was a good opportunity, so it was decided that Alex would present the awards to the winner of the first prize. Hearing the president's words, Colin and the people near him were so surprised that they couldn't believe what they had heard. So, Alex was the sponsor, but he was obviously a poor loser. How could he have so much money? Colin thought to himself. President Merritt, would you like to hand over the prize? Alex said with a bitter smile. No, Mr. Ambrose, you are an important person in our school. You must present this award yourself. The president led Alex to the center of the stage and handed the certificates to him. He said through the megaphone to the students, "Let's invite Mr. Ambrose to present awards for the first prize." A moment ago, the audience had seen the president approach Alex, but they hadn't been able to hear what they had been saying. Now, when they heard that Alex was the sponsor, they were thunderstruck. Many people shook their heads, and at first they refused to believe it. Everyone knew who the rich kids were in the school. Alex had never been mentioned. How could he have sponsored the party? But the president had confirmed it, and they had to believe him. A girl ran onto the stage. I know what he's done. Because he's the sponsor, he deliberately sabotaged Colin and Leona's performance. After doing his damage, he'll give the prize to Colin, which is humiliating to Colin and Leona. The girl was a staunch supporter of Colin. She grabbed the host's microphone and said to the audience, "We don't need such people to give awards to Colin and Leona. Let's reject this." The girl's words immediately received the response she expected. Most of the boys were upset because of Leona, and most of the girls because of Colin. Before, when Alex had pushed Colin aside and dragged Leona off the stage, everyone had developed a bad impression of him. "Calm down," the crowd cheered. "You don't need to present awards," the audience yelled. "Who are you?" said some from the crowd. "It's awful that you're the sponsor." Mr. Merritt became very anxious and angry when he saw the students below the stage hating Alex like this. He took the microphone and stopped them in a loud voice. "Don't talk nonsense. Mr. Ambrose is the sponsor of the party. Without him, there would have been no party. You should all thank him. The party cost at most $40,000 or $50,000. We can crowdfund that. We don't want such people to give awards to Colin and Leona. Have him step down." The girl who had grabbed the microphone earlier said out loud. "Yes, we'll crowdfund it. Give him back his money and let him step down," came a voice from the crowd. "Wasn't it 50,000? That's a lot for one person, but there are thousands of us here, and each of us can pay $100, yelled another. People in the audience scoffed at Alex and preferred to raise the money themselves rather than let Alex give awards to Colin and Leona. The crowd started chanting, "Alex, step down! Alex, step down! Alex, step down!" "Stop it, all of you!" The president was so angry that he roared, "If anyone slanders Mr. Ambrose again, I will take measures." Mr. Merritt was very worried. Alex was a generous person who had donated $1.5 million, and the students were mistreating him in such an ugly way. He felt ashamed of his university. If Alex wanted his money back, there was nothing he could do to stop him. And it wasn't that big a contribution to the school. Hearing that the president had threatened to take measures, the students lowered their voices. Mr. Merritt took Alex's hand and went to the front of the stage. He angrily said to them, "Do you think that Mr. Ambrose just sponsored the party?" "Maybe," some unconvinced students answered in a low voice. "Well, I'd like to tell you the exact figure of Mr. Ambrose's donation. Mr. Ambrose has donated over $1.5 million to the Richmond University Foundation for various expenses, awards, grants, and experimental funds. Many of you applied for school grants with Mr. Ambrose's money. Do you feel good embarrassing him, insulting him, and asking him to step off the stage? Do you want scholarships and grants?" The president asked sternly, raising his eyebrows. There was a great uproar from the seating area. How could the students believe that Alex had donated so much money to the school? Many people still held a questioning attitude towards the president. Mr. Merritt turned on his cell phone and projected a picture of the stack of bills, together with information about the Richmond University Foundation, onto a large screen with a video camera. When the students saw the evidence, they finally believed that Alex had really donated that much money to the university. He was obviously extremely wealthy. Many of them were applying for school grants. They were benefiting from Alex's generosity. How could they continue insulting him? Now they were in a hurry to make up for their previous impoliteness and impulsive behavior, and the tone of the audience changed. "Alex, Alex," the crowd chanted. "Alex Ambrose, I love you," said a girl from the crowd. "It's wonderful, he's great. I've applied for a grant. Thank you for supporting me," yelled a young man. "Mr. Ambrose, can you say a few words?" When the president saw with relief that the situation had finally stabilized, he handed the microphone to Alex. The applause from the audience became more and more intense, and cheers came and went. Alex couldn't refuse, so he took the microphone and said in a loud voice, "In fact, I donated the money because I had no place to put it. So I sent it to the finance department. Originally, I thought that the sponsorship of the New Year's party would use it all up. I didn't expect that the party would only cost $50,000. The rest of the money will be left to the school for other purposes. I hope you can apply for financial aid." After Alex finished speaking, the president nodded and cheers rose from the audience. "That's positive energy. This is how a wealthy man should act," the crowd cheered. "Alex, I'll study hard when I get the grant," said the boy from the soccer team. "Alex is much better than those rich kids who only use their money for drugs and girls," yelled the same angry girl. "Well, no more nonsense. Let's ask Mr. Ambrose to give the awards to his team," said the president with a smile. Alex took the certificate and went to Doug first. Doug looked at him and said timidly, "Alex, I'm sorry for being mean before." Looking at his withered appearance made Alex nervous. He wasn't a resentful person. He just handed the certificate to him and patted him on the shoulder. Next was Fiona. Seeing Alex standing in front of her, she shrunk like a kitten and whispered in a soft voice, "Alex, I'm sorry. I used to laugh at you because of my ignorance. I've often laughed at you for being a fool. No, I don't mean you. I am the fool." Alex thought that Fiona always laughed at him when they were rehearsing. Now she looked like a different person. He said, "You don't have to cower in front of me. Usually you laugh with me, not at me. Although it's a bit over the top, I really don't mind. But don't make fun of others in the future." "Yes, I know. I'll remember your words." Hearing that Alex wasn't blaming her, Fiona was pleased and took the certificate with a sweet smile. Alex had already passed by. Looking at him, she felt that he was such a warm man that a smile remained on her face. Seeing Alex walk in front of him, Colin's eyes grew cold with hatred. That day, he had been in the limelight, but Alex had stolen his popularity. Alex extended the certificate, but Colin didn't want to take it. He looked in all other directions, wondering why it should be Alex who was presenting the award to him. "Colin, don't you want the certificate?" Alex looked at the way he was acting in front of him and couldn't help but shout angrily. "You!" Colin stared at him, his heart burning with anger. At Richmond University, no one had ever dared to speak to him in that tone. "Colin, hurry up and take the certificate," the president urged him. He was unwilling, but now he had to take it. If he got angry with Alex on the stage, his image at the university would be completely destroyed. He snatched the certificate, holding his temper in check. Alex smiled, knowing that Colin must be very angry at that moment, while he himself felt extremely comfortable. Colin had been so arrogant for such a long time. Now, he would suffer a lot. When he approached Leona, his face became gentle as he handed her certificate to her. "Your certificate?" Under the stage lights, Leona quietly looked at Alex, took the certificate, gave a faint smile, and said in a soft voice, "You're a very deep man." Seeing her smiling at him, Alex felt a tremor run through his body. "I didn't mean to trick you. It's too complicated. I'll explain it to you later." He's so serious, as if he's afraid of being misunderstood. Obviously, he has a special love for me, she thought. She was slightly moved and lowered her head. "If it is complicated, I don't want to see Alex." "Well, Mr. Ambrose has already awarded the certificates. Now we invite all the cast members to come onto the stage and have a big group photo taken," the host said with a smile. All the actors backstage came up. Alex sat in the middle with the president and vice president. Ian was surprised to learn that Alex was the sponsor of the New Year's party. He was shocked to hear that he had donated more than $1.5 million to the university. He was wondering who Alex really was, thinking that he might be more important than Colin. Taking the opportunity presented by the group photo, Ian walked toward him, laughing lightly. "Alex, I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were before. I apologize to you. Please don't remember my mistakes. Please forgive me." Looking at him, Alex couldn't help but get angry. For more than 20 days, Ian had been rude to him in front of other people. He was a total flatterer. Now that he knew that he had money, he was coming over to flatter him. He smiled and waved to him. When Ian reached him, Alex grabbed his ear and said a few words in a low voice. Ian felt embarrassed, but he finally nodded and rushed off stage. After a while, the line for the pictures had been arranged. Ian ran up from backstage and immediately caused a burst of laughter. It turned out that he was only wearing red underwear. Ian weighed nearly 400 pounds, and his body was full of flabby fat. He stepped onto the stage trembling, but this was what Alex had asked him to do in order to gain his forgiveness, and he had to listen to Alex. There was a lot of ridicule coming from the seating area, and the actors on the stage also thought Ian was disgraceful, so they kept away from him while laughing. Ian walked toward Colin. Colin was surprised and asked, "Why are you coming over here?" If Alex had donated $1.5 million to the school, he must be more important than Colin. Ian would rather offend Colin than Alex. He went right up to Colin with a smile and put his arm around his shoulder. Colin, I'm sorry. Ian clung to Colin. No matter how much Colin yelled at him or tried to get him away, he just wouldn't let go. He hugged Colin, who seemed to be deeply trapped in Ian's rolls of fat. The people on the stage and off the stage laughed until their sides burst. At that moment, with a click, the big group photo was taken, which would be put on the university website. Colin's heart went cold when he thought of the way he was hanging shoulder to shoulder with Ian, a naked fat man. Episode 199, Lindsay is Missing. After the photos of the performers were taken, people started to leave the scene of the party. Colin said hello to Leona and asked her to join him as he and some of his followers decided to continue partying at dinner outside the school grounds. Leona didn't accept their invitation, as she preferred to spend a quiet night. Several school leaders wanted to invite Alex to dinner, but he declined politely. He asked them not to spread gossip about the donation to the public. Several of them praised Alex for being so unassuming. Eddie, a roommate, was watching Alex. He patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Old Alex, you're so rich, yet you hid it from us." Alex responded with a smile. "I had some money, but I've donated it all to the school. I'm poor again. I didn't deceive you. The money I had became like waste paper. I couldn't use it." "Rich people really do talk differently. Money has become waste paper," Eddie said with a grin. "You'll be the boss of our dormitory. You'll have a bright future with so much wealth." Alex laughed bitterly. He couldn't explain his situation to Eddie yet, so he didn't try. Eddie wanted to invite him to eat off campus, but Alex said that he had some personal affairs to take care of. He asked him for his cell phone back. After Eddie left, Alex saw that there were less than 200 people left in the quad. Leona was walking around the crowd with her phone in her hand, as if she were looking for someone. Alex hurriedly walked over to her. "Leona, what are you looking for?" Alex asked. "You're just in time. Didn't you bring Lindsay? Where is she now? I can't get through to her cell phone." Leona was looking anxious. "I don't know where she is," Alex replied. "Did I bring her here? Why are you asking me that?" "No," Leona was startled, and her heart trembled with fear. Alex didn't go to fetch Lindsay, and she couldn't get through on her phone. "What's happened to her?" she wondered. At that moment, her phone rang. She was so scared that she almost dropped it. When she saw that it was her father's number, she immediately answered. "Leona, I've sent a car to the school to pick you up. Now you hurry home." Charles Marvel sounded very solemn. "Is it Lindsay? What's happened?" "Lindsay's been kidnapped by Hunter. He called her and asked me for $10 million in ransom," her father said in a deep voice. "Leona, you're also in danger right now. Come home immediately." Hearing that Lindsay had been kidnapped, Leona's body shook so violently that she nearly fell over. Alex rushed to help her. "Get out of here," Leona snapped at him, pushing him aside. "Because of you, Lindsay's been kidnapped. I asked you to pick her up. Why didn't you pick her up? You lied to me that you'd brought her here." Alex was stunned. Looking at the overexcited Leona, his lips trembled. He wanted to ask her when he had brought Lindsay. He had no recollection of having done that, but he knew that he would only make her sadder by asking, so he held back. A BMW slowly drove into the quad. Shania, Leona's bodyguard, got out and helped her into the car. Before getting in, Leona looked venomously at Alex. Then the car drove off. Alex suddenly remembered his phone. He turned it on and sure enough, more than 3 hours ago, Leona had sent him a short message. "Alex, I'm Leona. My sister Lindsay wants to come to the party. Can you pick her up for me? She's at the KFC. Her cell phone number is 138. Seeing the text message, Alex was full of regrets. If he'd had his phone with him and seen that message in time, Lindsay might not have been kidnapped. Thinking of the kidnapping, he remembered that time in the Todd Mountain Scenic Area when Lindsay had told Hunter that he must resign. Now, Lindsay was suffering Hunter's revenge. Alex was so anxious that he wanted to rescue Lindsay himself. But now that she had been taken, he didn't know where she was. However, he couldn't just wait around doing nothing. He tried calling Leona to ask what information the Marvels had, but she didn't answer his calls. Deciding that Hunter had to be in Washington, he ran out to search for them. He looked everywhere, although he didn't really believe he would find her. From north to south, he searched bars, hotels, and abandoned buildings. He tried calling Lindsay's number, but no one answered. He knew how unlikely it would be to find her in such a big city. By 6 a.m, he felt his legs were going to drop off. He sat down on some steps to rest. Suddenly his cell rang. It was Lindsay's number. He immediately answered. "Hello, Lindsay?" Alex said, although he feared that the voice he would hear would be the kidnappers. But surprisingly, it was Lindsay herself who spoke. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm all right," she said. "You're all right, great. But where are you now? I'll go get you," he said. "I'm in the Central Hospital." After she hung up, Alex jumped into a taxi and immediately headed to the hospital. When he arrived at Lindsay's room, he saw her lying on the bed drinking from a bottle of water. Leona and her bodyguard Shania were standing beside her. There was also a distinguished-looking man, a little over 40 years of age. This must be Lindsay's father, Charles Marvel, Alex thought. He tapped on the door to announce his presence, and everyone in the room looked over. When Leona saw him, she felt her resentment rising and asked him coldly, "What are you doing here?" "Let me see Lindsay, and I want to explain to you what happened yesterday," he replied calmly. "No, my father and I can take care of Lindsay. You go back to the university," Leona said. She didn't want to hear his explanations. Thinking that Lindsay had been kidnapped because of him, she felt uncomfortable. Hearing her speak to him so decisively, Alex could not help but feel sad. He looked gloomy. He thought that Leona was still angry and turned to leave. "Alex?" Lindsay suddenly exclaimed. "You sit outside for a while, and then come in to see me later." Alex saw that she looked pale, but there was no trace of resentment in her expression. He nodded, feeling relieved, and sat down on a chair in the corridor. "Lindsay, who is he?" Mr. Marvel asked in a puzzled tone of voice. "He's a friend of mine," she answered. Looking at Leona, she said in a soft voice, "Leona, this has nothing to do with him. Don't blame him." "But yesterday I asked him to pick you up. He didn't go, and he lied to me and said that he had brought you. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have been kidnapped by Hunter," Leona said sullenly. It turned out that Hunter had been dismissed by the Marvel family because of what had happened at Todd Mountain. He had no financial resources, and he couldn't help but bear a grudge against the Marvels. He wanted to kidnap Lindsay and extort a large sum of money from them. He and the head of the area's security section had devised a plan to kidnap her, which they had put into practice the previous day. But the Marvels were one of the top 5 families in Washington. After learning that Lindsay had been kidnapped, they immediately mobilized their own family forces and the police. In the early hours of the morning, they had caught Hunter and successfully rescued Lindsay. Lindsay felt ill because she had been confined in a very small space. "Well, let's not talk about it. Everything's turned out all right," Mr. Marvel said. He looked at Lindsay. "David Drake is coming back from England tomorrow. Can you pick him up at the airport if you're in good health?" "I could." Lindsay nodded, but her face went pale. "Lindsay, I think you'd better stay in the hospital tomorrow," Leona said, sitting beside her bed and leaning on her shoulder. Looking at Lindsay's pallid appearance, Leona was very worried. "I'll pick him up for you. I'll tell him about your situation, and I'm sure he'll understand it." Charles nodded and said, "That's okay." To Lindsay, he added, "You take care of yourself." Father and daughter talked for a while, but he had some business to attend to, so he soon left. Lindsay smiled at Leona. "I'm all right now. You go back to university." Leona smiled back and said as a joke, "Is it because you want Alex to come in and see you?" "No, I'm concerned about your studies, okay?" Lindsay replied shyly as she blushed. "Debbie?" Alex saw Leona when she came out of the room, and he quickly stood up. "Yesterday I'd given my cell phone to someone to hold for me. I didn't see the message you sent." Leona looked at him and said coldly, "I will not ask you for help in the future. Moreover, I will tell you for the last time that I'm Leona, not Debbie. Please don't transfer your feelings for Debbie onto me again." With that, Leona and her bodyguard left. Looking at her retreating figure, Alex thought, "I'm sorry, Debbie. I made you angry. I won't be so rash in the future. I'll use a subtler way to get you to accept me." When Alex went back to Lindsay's room, he saw her sitting up in bed, smiling at him. He walked up to her and said sincerely, "I'm so sorry you were kidnapped." "It had nothing to do with you. I don't blame you at all," Lindsay said. Then she recounted what had happened the previous day. "By the way, didn't you want to see the New Year party yesterday? There's a video on the university website. You can open it and have a look," Alex said, laughing. Lindsay shook her head and said slowly, "I don't want to see the New Year party. I want to see a person." "Your sister? Her performance was so good that she won an award," Alex said. Lindsay shook her head and said with a smile, "I don't want to see my sister, but a benefactor of mine." Alex was stunned when he understood that she was referring to him. Seeing Lindsay's eyes twinkle and look so soft, his heart almost melted. He sighed and said, "What is there to see? Just a little loser from the street." Lindsay looked at him for a few seconds and asked, "Alex, you know I was kidnapped yesterday. What are your feelings about that? Were you worried about me? Or were you just afraid that my sister would blame you?" Alex was stunned and replied seriously, "I know that you've been kidnapped. I've been very anxious and full of self-reproach. I searched for you all over Washington. As for your sister blaming me, that was unexpected." Hearing his words, Lindsay beamed, lowered her head, and tears appeared in the corners of her eyes. Episode 200. Not Again. Looking at Lindsay's delicate state, Alex was moved. He wondered about his tender reaction toward her and found it interesting. But it isn't, particularly because of her. If it had been Philippa, Kelly, Rose, or Vivian, if anyone else had been kidnapped, I would feel the same reaction, he decided. Alex was trying to explain his feelings to Lindsay. She covered his mouth with her hand and whispered, "Don't say it. I know what you want to say. Can you leave me with my dream?" Lindsay put her hand down and they were silent for a few seconds. Alex spoke first. "Lindsay, I want to ask you something. Please tell me the truth. Is your sister suffering from amnesia? She didn't live in your house before, did she?" Alex always felt that Debbie didn't recognize him because she might have lost her memory. He wanted Lindsay to admit this. Looking into his eyes, Lindsay's heart surged. She said slowly, "My sister has lost her memory, but she has always lived in our house. Even when she was away from home, someone always followed her." Alex looked into Lindsay's eyes, trying to judge whether she was lying to him. "I know you still think my sister is your girlfriend, Debbie, but all I can say is that she is not," Lindsay sighed. Alex nodded and said nothing. "Can you come and see me tomorrow?" Lindsay felt that he was anxious to return to school. He nodded. The next day, Alex came to the hospital early and brought her breakfast. He was there most of the day and was disappointed that Leona didn't come to see her. "Alex, will you leave with me?" Lindsay asked him. "Are you already feeling well? It's better for you to stay resting in the hospital," Alex said solemnly. "Oh, okay. I've been locked up in here for enough hours already. I'm almost fine now. I think it would be better for me to go out and have some fun," Lindsay said coyly. Seeing that she had recovered, Alex agreed. After they had left the hospital, they went to an amusement park and visited a museum. Lindsay had a good time. While Alex was with Lindsay, a flight from New York landed at Washington International Airport. After all the passengers got off the plane, two tall men built like fitness coaches came out. Behind them was a young man wearing an expensive dark blue shirt and a pair of casual blue jeans. On his feet were top brand casual shoes. He had a very sharp figure. As he walked out, his sharp eyes glanced down at his phone. This was David Drake, the Drakes' only son. The Drakes were the top family in Washington. Two bodyguards led him through the air bridge. At that moment, a Bentley stopped in a restricted area by the arrivals terminal, and the driver got out of the car. Even the mayor was not allowed to park in that spot, but the Drake family's influence in Washington was so great that they could go wherever they pleased. "Mr. Drake, you're finally back from Europe," the driver said to David with a flattering smile. "If I didn't come back, would you marry me?" David said with a smile. "How come no one has turned up to greet him today? None of the rich kids from Washington has come. Has it been a collective rebellion?" One of his bodyguards, Tom Martin, asked the driver in a whiny tone. "In the past, whenever David returned from a trip, there were always all those rich kids here to welcome him back." The driver had no idea, so he didn't reply to the bodyguard with the red face. "I didn't tell them I was returning, that's why," David said, annoyed at Tom. Tom was so frightened by his annoyance that he bowed his head and said, "I'm sorry, sir. I should die." "Hasn't Lindsay come yet?" David asked. She was one of the few people who knew that he was returning to Washington. It didn't seem appropriate to him that she hadn't come to the airport. "I haven't seen Miss Marvel," the driver muttered. David's face turned dark. "What a shame. Is she not coming today?" Tom muttered. "Yes, it's so arrogant of her. It's the least she could do," said another bodyguard. Just then they heard the light click of footsteps approaching. David looked in the direction of the sound. A beautiful young woman in a plain white dress came up to him. David's eyes immediately locked on her. "David, I'm late." It was the beautiful Leona. In the hospital, she had promised Lindsay that she would come to meet David for her. David's eyes scanned Leona's face. He couldn't see anything else or hear any sounds. He thought that she was more beautiful than a fairy princess. "Sir?" Tom lightly touched his arm and he came back to his senses. Leona smiled and said, "I'm Lindsay's sister." David was puzzled. He had never heard of Lindsay's sister. "My sister is ill. She asked me to pick you up today. David, you're not angry with Lindsay, are you?" Leona asked, seeing that David was still frowning. "No, I'm not. What's the matter with her?" "By the way, what's your name?" David asked with a smile. According to her sister, David had been to her house. How could he not even know her name? Maybe he had been abroad for too long and forgotten it. She whispered, "My name is Leona." "Leona, good name," he said with a smile. "Thank you very much for coming to meet me today. As a token of my gratitude, would you like to come out to dinner with me?" "Well, David, that's very polite of you." In fact, Leona thought his invitation was inappropriate. After all, she was Lindsay's sister. It seemed it would be a bit awkward to have dinner with her sister's fiancé. However, David had invited her, and she didn't think she should turn him down. "You can leave," David said to the driver. "Tom can follow me." He asked Leona to go with him outside the airport. Tom followed them. The driver and another bodyguard were in a daze. They had worked for David for many years and had never seen him be so polite and warm to anyone. When they first saw David look at Leona, they both thought that he didn't like her. This was an impossible situation. David was engaged to Miss Lindsay, and her sister would tell her about this. How awkward. The driver and the bodyguard set off to David's house with his luggage. It was getting dark. Alex and Lindsay had arrived at a snack area near the river. "Let's stop here. I'll take you to that barbecue." Alex and Lindsay sat down at a barbecue stand. Alex ordered hot dogs, burgers, and chicken wings, which were soon brought over to their table. After walking for such a long time, Alex was starving and started gobbling up what was in front of him. Lindsay sat beside him with a hot dog in her hand. She just took one bite and looked at Alex quietly. "Are you not used to eating these things? No wonder, you're a marvel. You're used to eating fancier food. I shouldn't have brought you here," he said remorsefully. "It's not that I can't get used to it," Lindsay said with a smile. "I was just thinking how I would like to be an ordinary girl instead of a marvel, so I could come here to have a barbecue with you every day." Alex was relieved and replied with a smile, "Why can't you have a barbecue with me if you're a marvel? If you ever want to go out to eat, please call me and I'll go with you." "In the future, I'm afraid there won't be many opportunities. I think I'm going to get drunk today. Alex, I'd love to have a drink with you. Have a toast with me." Lindsay held up her beer, clinked Alex's glass, and drank. They were busy eating when they heard several people coming toward them. Alex and Lindsay glanced at each other. 4 young men who looked like thugs went to their table. As soon as they sat down, they acted as if the food on the table belonged to them, and they started eating it. Lindsay gave Alex a worried look, and he gently patted her on the back to reassure her. "Bro, I'm a little short of money. Give me some money," a young man with yellow hair said to Alex while munching on a chicken wing. "Do you think I'm a rich man?" Alex replied jokingly. "You are certainly not, but that beauty sitting next to you is a rich woman," the thug said, turning toward Lindsay. "We've been following you for a long time around the amusement park and museum. You were very generous. Now you can lend me some money, because I have a few expenses to take care of." The thug, named Lucas Pierce, looked at her and smirked. Lindsay took out $300 from her purse and handed them to him. "Here you are. We're leaving." She wanted to get away from those people as quickly as possible. "Only 300? Lucas took it, flattened his mouth, and put the money in his pocket. "The Olympics are about to take place. After the games are over, on the 15th of September, the Marvels will marry off their second daughter to the Drake boy. The police are being very strict. For at least a month, we punks won't be able to come out to collect our protection fees. So now, while the police are still more relaxed, we have to make more money. Another thug said. "The second Marvel daughter is going to marry into the Drake family? Isn't that Lindsay?" Alex was surprised and asked, "Is that true?" "Hey, I don't really know anything about this. I've got nothing to tell you. The Drakes are the top family in Washington. David has a crush on Miss Marvel. This marriage is going to be a big event. The police are going to be out in full force to keep order in the city. We can't go out to work with so many cops around, you know." "Hey, beautiful woman. If we take $3,000 from you, we won't embarrass you anymore," Lucas said to Lindsay. Lindsay wanted to give him the money, but Alex grabbed her bag and shook his head. "You already gave him 300. Now they want 3,000. If you give them 3,000, they'll want 30,000 more. Let's go." Alex pulled Lindsay up and was about to leave. "You don't take us seriously, do you?" Lucas smashed a beer bottle. The 4 thugs stood up and surrounded them. "What are you doing? I'll call the police." Alex placed Lindsay behind him and frowned at the thugs. "I'll tear your mouth out before you call the police," Lucas said fiercely, and then looked Lindsay up and down. An evil light glimmered in his eyes. "Guys, this girl looks really hot. Let's beat up the dude first, and then take this girl to a hotel and have a good time. We make the girl happy, and she hands over the money on her card on her own initiative."
Thank you for listening to Crown TV. Please don't forget to subscribe, share and turn on the notification button.